All right, so are you ready to dive into the future of rugby league?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay, so we've got this article called The Future of Rugby League: Expansion, Innovation, and Global Growth. And let me tell ya, it is jam-packed with some pretty wild ideas.
Yeah, I had to look through it earlier, and I have to say it's pretty ambitious stuff.
Ambitious is an understatement. We're talking about potential new teams, rule changes, tech advancements, and a booming women's league.
The sport's definitely at a turning point, and this article lays out a roadmap for some pretty major changes.
Right from the start, I was hooked. A second New Zealand team in the NRL, state of origin games potentially being played in the US.
And get this, they're even talking about virtual reality experiences that could put you right there on the field.
It's mind-blowing, and it makes you wonder what rugby league will look like in, say, 5 or 10 years.
It's clear that the folks behind this article see a future where rugby league is a truly global force.
Okay, so let's break it down, starting with this expansion fever. It seems like everyone wants a piece of the rugby league pie.
Absolutely. The article talks about how the NRL is looking beyond its current 17 teams, and Perth is making a serious push to get back in the game with the Western Reds.
Yeah, the Bears, they're called now, right?
The Perth Bears, yep. But it doesn't stop there. A second New Zealand team is also being considered, which could really shake things up in the Trans-Tasman rivalry.
Oh, imagine the battles between the Warriors and a second Kiwi team. It would be epic.
For sure. And we can't forget about the push for more Pacific representation. The article even mentions the possibility of a combined Papua New Guinea and Fiji team.
Now, that would be something special. Imagine the passion and the raw talent they would bring to the NRL.
And don't forget about the potential return of the Adelaide Rams. Bringing rugby league back to South Australia would be huge for the sport.
It seems like Australia is getting a lot of attention, but what about the Super League? Is there any talk of expansion there?
Oh yeah, the Super League's got big plans too. The London Broncos are back in the mix, which is crucial for raising the profile of the sport in England's capital.
London is such a massive sporting city. It makes sense to have a strong rugby league presence there.
Exactly. And they're also looking at expanding further into France, with more teams beyond the Catalans Dragons.
So they're really trying to build up that European presence.
And there are even whispers about reviving the Toronto Wolfpack, which would rekindle that North American spark that we saw a few years back.
Wow. So with all this expansion talk, where do you think rugby league is headed in the long run? What's the bigger picture here?
Well, it's pretty clear that they're aiming for global domination. I think they want to make rugby league a truly worldwide sport.
And to do that, they need to reach new markets, grow their fan base, and develop talent all over the world.
Exactly. And that's where all these changes come in. They're not just expanding for the sake of it. It's all part of a strategic plan to take the sport to the next level.
And speaking of taking it to the next level, the international scene is already heating up. Just look at the 2021 Rugby League World Cup. Samoa making it to the final was huge, wasn't it?
It was a historic moment, and it really showed the rise of the Pacific nations. Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji are becoming powerhouses, and they're changing the dynamics of international competition.
I'm excited to see what they do in the future.
Me too. They're definitely challenging the traditional hierarchy. And get this, the article even throws out some pretty wild ideas for future international matches.
Like what?
Well, for starters, they talk about the possibility of taking state of origin games overseas. Can you imagine the spectacle of a state of origin match in New York City?
Whoa, that would be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be huge. And they also mention the possibility of a Pacific Origin series and even an All-Stars International Origin clash.
Now, those are some seriously bold ideas. I love it. It shows how ambitious rugby league is becoming on the international stage.
Exactly. They're not afraid to think big, and that's what makes this sport so exciting to follow.
Speaking of exciting, this article also talks about a tech revolution that's happening both on and off the field. It seems like technology is changing everything about how the game is played and experienced.
Technology is definitely playing a bigger and bigger role. I mean, we've already seen the impact of the NRL bunker in Australia.
The bunker. For people who might not know what that is, can you explain it?
Sure. The bunker is basically a video referee system that helps make decisions on tries, knock-ons, and foul play. It's meant to improve officiating and add another layer of analysis to the game.
Oh, so it's kind of like what they have in tennis and cricket. They use technology to review close calls and make sure the right decisions are being made.
Exactly. And this article suggests that AI-driven refereeing could be the next big leap forward in rugby league. Imagine a game where human error is completely eliminated from officiating.
That's a huge change. It would definitely spark some debate.
Oh yeah, for sure. Some people might argue that it takes away from the human element of the game.
The drama of those close calls, the arguments about whether it was a try or not.
Exactly. But others might say that it makes the game fairer and more accurate. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
And for the fans, it's not just about the officiating. The article talks about using VR headsets to give fans a whole new way to experience the game.
That's right. Imagine putting on a VR headset and suddenly you're right there on the field experiencing the game from a player's perspective.
I tried something like that once. It was a rugby VR experience, and it was wild. You feel the speed, you feel the intensity. It's crazy.
And think about the possibilities for replays and analysis. You could rewind a crucial play and see it from multiple angles, even from the referee's perspective.
Right.
It could completely change how we understand the game.
And the article also talks about using augmented reality in stadiums so fans can see real-time stats and player info right there in front of them.
It's like having a whole new layer of information overlaid on the game. You can see a player's running speed, their heart rate, their passing accuracy, all in real time.
It would revolutionize how we watch the game live.
It could even change fantasy sports, giving fans a whole new level of detail and engagement. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
But with all this talk about innovation and pushing boundaries, it's important that we don't forget about the human element.
Absolutely. And that includes player safety, which is something the article addresses as well.
Good, because player safety is huge these days, especially with all the concerns about concussions and long-term injuries.
Right, and the article highlights some significant changes in this area. We're talking about stricter high tackle rules that could lead to automatic sin bins or even send-offs for dangerous tackle.
Yeah, so they're really cracking down.
They're serious about it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about punishing players after the fact. They're also pushing for training programs that focus on safer tackling techniques to minimize head injuries.
So it's a multifaceted approach, both deterrence and education.
Exactly. They're trying to change the culture of the game and make it safer for everyone. And they're also considering some rule changes to speed up the game.
Yeah, I read about that, like a shot clock for play the ball and scrums.
And they're even talking about using AI to instantly review potential penalty tries. It's all about finding the right balance between player safety and maintaining the fast-paced flow of the game that fans love.
I like that. Protecting the players, but also keeping the game exciting. It's a tough balance to strike.
It is. But they're making a real effort to get it right.
Now let's talk about an area that's really gaining momentum, the women's game. The NRLW is on fire right now.
It's amazing to see how far the women's game has come in such a short time. And this article predicts that it's only going to get bigger and better.
That's great to hear. It's important to have strong female athletes to inspire the next generation.
Absolutely. And the article talks about expanding the NRLW to potentially 12 or even 14 teams with a longer season to create a truly professional environment for female athletes.
So a real commitment to building a sustainable and successful women's league.
Yeah, they're not just paying lip service to it. They're putting real resources behind it. And it's not just about the NRLW either. The Women's Rugby League World Cup is expected to grow as well.
That's awesome. So the women's game is growing at all levels, which is fantastic to see.
It's a win-win for everyone. It elevates female athletes, it broadens the appeal of rugby league, and it brings new fans and sponsors to the sport.
Now this is where things get really interesting. Let's talk money. The article mentions billion-dollar TV deals, streaming wars, and a global audience hungry for more rugby league.
The financial implications of all this growth are pretty mind-boggling. This is big business.
And let's not forget about the role of digital platforms and social media. The article even mentions the potential for esports and virtual rugby league.
They're exploring every avenue to reach new audiences, especially younger generations, who consume content in entirely different ways. They're thinking outside the box, and that's what's going to keep rugby league relevant in the years to come.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Expansion technology, player safety, the women's game, the business side of things. There's just so much happening in rugby league right now.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right. We need more time to digest all this.
There's a lot more to unpack.
We'll be right back to dive even deeper into these changes and explore what they could mean for the future of this incredible sport.
It really is amazing to see how much rugby league has already evolved and the pace of change. It's just incredible.
It's like they're not afraid to experiment. You know, they're trying all these different things to see what works.
And one thing that really struck me in this article is the focus on fan engagement. It's not just about filling stadiums, it's about creating a deeper, more interactive experience.
Yeah, like with those VR headsets we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Imagine watching a State of Origin match from Cameron Munster's point of view. It'd be like you're right there in the thick of it.
Think about the possibilities for replays, too.
Oh, yeah.
You could rewind a crucial play and see it from multiple angles, even from the ref's perspective.
Wow. You could really break down the game like never before.
It could completely change how we understand and appreciate the nuances of rugby league.
And then there's augmented reality, you know? Imagine being at the stadium and seeing real-time stats and player info overlaid on the field as you watch the game.
It would be like having access to a whole new layer of information right there in front of you.
It would definitely enhance the live experience, that's for sure.
And it could revolutionize fantasy sports, too, giving fans even more ways to connect with the game on a deeper level.
All this talk about technology and the future of the sport, it got me thinking about something that the article didn't really touch on.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The social impact of rugby league. They talk about the financial aspects, but what about the environmental impact of all this expansion and globalization?
That's a really important point, More travel for teams and fans, larger stadiums with bigger energy footprints, increased consumption of merchandise.
Exactly. It all adds up.
And if we're talking about virtual reality and esports, we have to think about the energy required to power those technologies too.
So it's not just about the excitement and the growth, it's also about being responsible and sustainable.
Right. Rugby League has always had strong ties to local communities, but as it grows globally, it needs to consider its impact on the planet.
Absolutely. We want future generations to be able to enjoy this sport without, compromising the health of our planet.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers,
Definitely.
but it's something that the sports governing bodies need to be thinking about as they plan for the future.
Now, switching gears a bit, another thing that I thought the article could have explored more is the potential impact of artificial intelligence on player development and training.
Well, that's an interesting one.
What kind of applications are we talking about here?
Well, imagine AI being used to analyze player performance data, identify areas for improvement, even personalized training regimes.
So we could have AI coaches, basically.
In a way, yeah. AI could tailor training plans to individual players' strengths and weaknesses.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. But I wonder if we lose something if we rely too heavily on machines.
It's all about finding the right balance. AI can be an incredibly powerful tool, but it can't replace the intuition and experience of a human coach.
Right, there's got to be that human connection, that understanding.
Exactly. We need to make sure that technology enhances the human element of rugby league, not replaces it.
Well said. I think it's clear that the future of rugby league is full of possibilities, but also challenges. It's going to be a fascinating ride.
Definitely a lot to look forward to and a lot to think about.
For sure. Now, what else did this article cover? It feels like every aspect of the game is up for grabs right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like a blank slate. They're willing to consider anything and everything.
And that makes me wonder, could we see some really radical rule changes? Stuff that would actually change how rugby league is played at its core.
Well, the article mentions a few ideas to speed up the game, but they're pretty minor tweaks. What if they went further?
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, how about this? Imagine a rule that allows unlimited interchanges.
Unlimited?
Yeah.
So you could just swap players in and out constantly.
Exactly. It would create a much faster, more dynamic game.
It would be wild to watch, that's for sure. But wouldn't it give an advantage to teams with bigger benches and more money?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
It could create an uneven playing field.
Yeah. If some teams can afford to rotate fresh players all the time while others are stuck with a tired squad.
It's something to think about, for sure.
Yeah.
It would definitely change the strategy of the game.
And speaking of changing the game, another thing the article didn't really explore is different formats of rugby league.
Oh, yeah, like rugby sevens.
Exactly. Sevens has become so popular, maybe rugby league could create its own shortened format.
Maybe with fewer players on a smaller field.
Yeah, something like that. It could be a great way to introduce the sport to new audiences.
Especially in countries where rugby league isn't as popular.
It could be like a gateway to the full version of the game.
Right, like a taste of what rugby league is all about.
And it could be a hit with broadcasters, too.
Oh, yeah, they love those shorter, more action-packed formats.
It just seems like there are so many possibilities.
There are. It's an exciting time to be a rugby league fan.
It really is. I mean, we've talked about so much today. Expansion technology, the women's game, the financial side of things, the social impact, even the roles of the game itself. It's a lot to take in.
It's clear that rugby league is evolving rapidly, and it's going to be fascinating to see where it goes from here.
I can't wait to see what the future holds for this sport. It's going to be a wild ride.
Definitely a ride worth taking.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the future of Rugby League.
It's been a great discussion.
Thanks for joining us, and be sure to check out the show notes for a link to that article we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the read.
And until next time, keep those rugby balls spinning.